book Rejuvenation Without Medicines by Gurdev Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Acharya. This booklet on rejuvenation without medicine presents the diagnosis of the causes of weakness and disease and gives practical suggestions for improving health, vigor, and longevity, and ultimately attaining integral rejuvenation. Preface. Nature has innately gifted all living creatures with vibrant health. Every creature is born with natural resources to be able to lead a healthy and happy life. It is only at the level of human species that one observes a vast majority suffering from some or other kind of illness, affliction, or weakness. When all other creatures, in spite of having nominal intelligence, keep themselves healthy, it is indeed surprising that human beings, claiming themselves to be the most intelligent, should be suffering from all kinds of diseases. In this booklet, we bring to our readers Pujya Gurudev's diagnosis of all the ills and his practical suggestions for improving health and vigor and attaining longevity. This is a compilation of articles on the main theme, Rejuvenation Without Medicines, published in Akhand Jyoti, the Light Divine, a bi-monthly magazine of the mission. These articles have been taken mainly from Pujya Gurudev's popular booklet in Hindi, Bina Aushadhiyan Ki Kaya Kalp, meaning rejuvenation without medicines. It is hoped that the readers will appreciate the diagnosis of the cause of weakness and inspired to follow the guidelines suggested by Pujya Gurudev for attaining integral rejuvenation. What causes weakness and disease? The root cause of both the weakness and the disease are same. When adequate life force is not generated for normal functioning of body, it is called weakness. And when this condition deteriorates further and creates a problem for a specific body part or the entire body, it is called a disease. There is a half-baked theory that diseases are spread by viruses. This creates a false impression that disease comes from outside. If one protects oneself from viruses, there will be no disease. To a large extent, this is not true. In a healthy body, there is so much acid, alkali, and heat that any external germs or viruses are easily destroyed. External infections get shelter only in weak body with low vitality. During the spread of highly infectious diseases like plague, cholera, smallpox, etc., healthy volunteers serve the patients and also cremate the dead, but nothing happens to them. The mothers keep their children infected with smallpox tucked in their laps. Patients suffering from tuberculosis are also nursed by their relatives, but it has been observed that nothing happens to the person attending to them. The sweepers, whose only job is to clean the dirt, are seen to be so much healthier than the people who are time afraid of germs and viruses. It has also been observed that it is the so-called high-class families where every care is taken to keep the homes clean and disinfected, residents suffer from incurable diseases. When so much care is taken to protect the environment, how are the germs or viruses of diseases able to attack the residents? Even if we assume that the diseases come from outside, then also we have to accept the fact that disease-causing germs virus are able to make their homes only in weak bodies. If they enter a healthy and a strong body, then the life force will immediately eliminate them. Normally, the root cause of weakness and disease lies in the stomach. When the food intake is not properly digested, it does not produce healthy blood in the sufficient amount, resulting in low production of life energy. Therefore, people with disordered digestive system suffer from low vitality. This result is the weakness of inner as well as outer body, giving rise to many ailments like constipation, acidity, burning sensation, headaches, stiffness, pain, laziness, etc. Thus, the weakness is a kind of disease itself. The disturbed digestive process results in rotting of food in the stomach. Suppose wheat flour mixed with water is kept in a pot in warm place. Soon it will rot and produce a foul smell. The mixture will become toxic and germs will be produced. Likewise, the undigested food in the stomach becomes toxic and these toxins spread all over the parts of the body. Wherever they accumulate, they create trouble and inharmony there. Such troubles or inharmonies are called diseases. A healthy body removes toxins and unused matter daily from the body through excretion. Excrement of urine, sweat, mucus, earwax, etc. are manifestations of the removal of toxins. But the body with low vitality cannot do this cleaning efficiently, and hence the toxins go on accumulating in it. When this condition is aggravated, it is manifested in the form of different diseases. The WBC, white blood cells in the blood, are the soldiers of the defense system of the body. As soon as they find foreign invaders in the form of toxins, germs, or viruses, they gather and start a counterattack and fight till the invaders are eliminated. This process produces heat and swelling in the affected body part. If the battlefield is spread over the entire body, the whole body will be heated. This is called fever. The body removes toxins in different forms, for example, phlegm, vomiting, loose motions, mucus, etc. When these symptoms appear, one should neither be perturbed nor suppressed, rather they should be allowed to run their course slowly so that the task of cleaning is done properly. If these symptoms are suppressed, the toxins will remain in the body and upon getting a chance will strike again in some or the other form of illness. What is pain? It is nothing but the effect of the tussle between the life force and toxic elements. In this struggle, if WBCs win, then disease will be cured. And if toxic elements win, then they will harm the body. A poisonous abscess can emaciate even the adjacent bone. A very high fever can cause death. Aggravated diarrhea may cause excessive weakness. These are examples of victory of toxins. Defeating the foreign invaders, toxins, and helping the army of WBC in keeping the body healthy is the objective of therapy. It should be the duty of the therapist not to suppress the symptoms of the disease, but help strengthen the immune system of the body so that it becomes capable of fighting the foreign elements. Unfortunately, the modern methods of treatment aim at demonstrating the miracles of medicine by suppressing the disease. It is true that the patient feels some immediate relief by this method, but he is not cured completely. Strong medicines, especially antibiotics, accomplish the task of destruction. They destroy both the viruses as well as healthy cells, leaving the side effects that continue for weeks and sometimes even months. Suppose our army is fighting that of the enemy and poisonous gas is spread so that both the armies die and then rejoice and end the war. Indeed, the war ended, but our army also vanished along with the enemies. It would have been praiseworthy had the army of the enemy died and no harm done to our side. Medical treatment must be done. However, it should be such that it neutralizes the body poisons and protects the healthy preserving cells even though it may take some time. Please remember, weakness and disease both are one and the same thing. Improving the digestive system is the basic treatment for all diseases. By this method, the weakness as well as the diseases both are removed and the patient acquires good health. Return to nature. Upon investigating the physiques of all creatures of nature, it appears that all except human species normally enjoy a happy and healthy life. Birds flying in the sky, herbivorous and carnivorous animals roaming in the forests, insects hiding in the grass and so on, all kinds of creatures lead a very healthy life. They need neither any doctors nor therapists. They neither bother about tablets, syrup, powders or herbs, nor have anything to do with injections, operations or any therapies. These creatures have very little wisdom. They have no knowledge of allopathy, Ayurveda, homeopathy or any other therapies. Even then, we find that no animal bird is suffering from any disease like diarrhea, arthritis, gout, piles, cough, cold, diabetes, asthma, gonorrhea, hydrocele, tuberculosis, AIDS, etc. None among them is seen moaning and groaning with pain. All of them lead a blissful life in the kingdom of God. From the moment they take birth to the time of death, they never feel that they have any problem related to health. There may hardly be 1 out of 100 animals, birds, who may be suspected of any disease. On the contrary, it has been observed that 99 out of 100 human beings are suffering from some major or minor disease. Just take a round of any hospital and read the reports of patients. You will find how innumerable people are suffering from dangerous diseases. Millions of physicians, surgeons, therapists, homeopaths, Ayurveda doctors, etc. have opened their shops and hordes of patients are regularly visiting them. The firms manufacturing and selling medicines have amassed enormous fortunes. But the number of patients and so also the type of diseases are increasing day by day. Diseases have trapped the human beings, so we should say that the humans have adopted the diseases. Whosoever from the animal kingdom have come in contact with the humans, they also got the forced freedom of choice. Whatever animals have been domesticated and forced to follow the will of human beings have also met similar fate. Cows, bulls, buffaloes, goats, sheep, horses, camels, elephants, parrots, etc. also fall sick now and then. So now plenty of veterinary doctors and hospitals have sprouted for treating the animals. That is the effect of company of human beings. It is indeed a matter of great surprise that all other creatures, in spite of having negligible intelligence and also no resources, keep themselves healthy. But the so-called most intelligent creatures, the human being, is suffering from all kinds of ailments and also pushes in the hell those animals who are domesticated by them. No doubt, human race is gifted with unique attributes with which it has done many mind-boggling scientific feats. Wherever we go, we see the miracles of human intelligence, from entertaining to items of luxury, agriculture to industrial development, travel and tourism, education and information technology, etc., etc. There have been a kind of explosion of novel techniques, equipments, devices, etc. However, the effort done in the direction of improving health and longevity have not been rewarded appropriately. In this field, most newer ways of improving health instead of benefiting have proved to be harmful. Upon seriously contemplating on this tricky problem of health, it appears that life of every creature is tied with strong bonds to set rules of nature. The life-creating agency, nature, in order to keep the body-mind system healthy, also devised a set of rules. The creature that follow these rules remain healthy, and those who disobey get trapped in the web of disease. The cunningness of a human being does not succeed with Mother Nature. Sometimes it is possible to escape the punishment after breaking the civil rules, but it is extremely difficult to deceive the nature. Mother Nature is very kind but very harsh too. A person obeying her rules gets the gift of healthy, happy life. Disobeying her gets tough punishment. The rules of nature are so clear, well established in nature that no book or treatise are needed to know them. 10 senses and 11th wisdom are such touchstones that can judge in a minute what is wrong or right for keeping the body healthy. They can differentiate instantly between the useful and the useless. If the conscious nerves of our senses are allowed to work freely in their natural form without deceiving them, they are capable of guiding us onto the highway to achieve maintenance of excellent health. All other creatures act according to the instinctual guidance of their senses as provided by the nature and enjoy good health. They accept only that food which their instinct considers appropriate for them. They will not touch any other thing. The goat eats leaves of oats, but if they are given to a cow, she will not accept, even if she dies. Wolf eats meat, but if it is given to a buffalo, it will not, even if it touches it. Parrots like green chilies, but the pigeon does not. At the entrance of mouth, nature has posted a guard in front of the tongue which inspects, tests, what should I or not be allowed to go inside. The test of this guard is never wrong, but people waste their intelligence in deceiving, keeping in doubt, camouflage, making incapable this faithful guard by adding variety of spices to the food. The senses too, after bearing continuous outrage, mold themselves and do not resist even when we take harmful food. The tongue does not enjoy the intake and, for example, tobacco, wine, meat, chilies, etc. But due to the deep-rooted habits, people go on sending these toxic and harmful items to the stomach. This is an atrocity on the taste sense. A person doing atrocities on nature's guard cannot be saved from punishment. He gets this punishment in the form of disease.
Chapter 2. Nose, the sensor of smell, after sensing a foul smell, immediately orders, "Run away from here, the air is polluted." It feels pleasure amongst the fragrant flowers of a garden, as if it tells that this place is good for us. eyes to hate looking at ugly, disgusting, and filthy scenes, and love to see beautiful, lively, charming, pleasant, and well organized things. This judgment of these senses is a clear indication of our loss or profit. Ears to dislike discordant, piercing, and jarring words, and are always keen to listen soothing, sweet, and melodious tunes. Every sense possesses this faculty of discriminating good or bad. But when they are trained daily for the bad, they become habitual and stop discriminating. Take the case of sex. Among all the living species of nature, male and female live together, but the male copulates with the female only when she has the desire for it. The female too gets excited only when she desires to get pregnant, and as soon as this need is fulfilled, they remain cool for a long time unless they again feel the need. In this context, the human has no rules and no barriers. The truth is that all our senses are misused. Eating non-eatables, living in an unhealthy environment, sleeping during the day, keeping awake till night, working in intense artificial light, watching filthy and erotic TV channels, listening to vulgar songs, having uncontrolled and excessive sex, etc. All these have destroyed the inherent wisdom of senses. How can such an uncontrolled life be expected to remain healthy? The physical configuration of the body is such that it can protect itself from heat and cold. Even tiniest and weakest creatures roam around naked during winter and summer, but none of them get affected by pneumonia or struck by a heat stroke. In the garb of preventing the body from cold or heat, normally people cover the body by many layers of clothes. This prevents proper ventilation of the body. Oxygenated air does not reach the pores, and the body odors remain engulfed within the clothes. This fashionability of wearing colorful and heavy costume ultimately results in the eruption of skin diseases. Traveling by fast vehicles is also harmful to the body. In fact, the climate changes slightly every 50 kilometers. Therefore, traveling hundreds of kilometers in few hours, example by air, make a significant change in climate. In most cases, the body cannot adapt to this change and falls sick. Artificiality and the craze of new fashions, new techniques of living, new modes of transportation and communication, etc., have certainly contributed to social progress, but it has also ruined the health of the masses. In ancient times, our reverend ancestors living in the forests and groves were deprived of present-day miracles of science and technology. Even then, they enjoyed the bliss of holistic health all their lives. Ancient history is full of valor of mighty people. Archaeologists have found 5,000 years old skeletons of human beings from which they have inferred that the height and weight of a man used to be around 8 feet and 300 kgs respectively. Even in the last century, there were quite a good number of people who could eat 6 to 7 kgs of food at a time, walk 40 to 50 kilometers daily, and live for 100 to 150 years. But within 1 century, all these things have become impossible. Fashionability, artificiality, and unnatural routine has snatched away people's health and long life. If this routine is not changed, the day is not far when in coming century people will become dwarfs and short-lived, as has been prophesied by Goswami Tulsidas in the Uttarakhand of the epic Ramcharitmanas. The human conduct against nature will gradually destroy his health, very base of life. Unless this downward sliding is stopped, there will be no stopping of diseases and pains. Rather, they will go on increasing day by day. Therefore, the people suffering from diseases, weakness and pain should listen carefully and should make a note of it, their welfare in obeying the laws of nature and in not breaking them. We can get the gift of life from Mother Nature by behaving like an obedient child and not by defying her. It is true that present-day human society has been engulfed in such circumstances that it is not possible to follow completely the natural routine, but it is also true that whatever artificiality has crept in the daily routine due to false fashion, bragging or greed of eating spicy food can be reduced considerably. If the life pattern is formed keeping in mind purity, naturality and the need, then many ostentations of eating and living which seem to be the base of present-day fashion and culture will appear useless, and like a heavy load it will appear desirable to shed them as early as possible. O men, desirous of rejuvenation, people, desirous of happy and healthy life, give up this artificial and unnatural routine and return to nature. Let us turn our back on this artificial splendor. Let us live a life of simple yet elegant life. Let us bow to Mother Nature, atone from our wrongdoings, and beg for healthy life. Compassionate Mother will make us drink her milk and we will be blessed. 4-point formula for good health. We should thoroughly assimilate the fact that acquiring good health depends only on obeying the rules of nature. In order to get rid of diseases or weakness, one should think along improving the digestive system rather than taking shelter of medicines or tonics. If the digestive power is not good, even the valuable nourishing elements will not be able to impart any benefit. They will go in the stomach and without getting digested will be excreted. If they are not digested and juices and blood are not formed, how can they nourish the body? How will they augment strength? If the digestion is proper, even an ordinary food can provide full strength. Billy goat eats only grass and accumulates so much fat from it. Pig never gets milk, cream or butter, but its food hardly contains any nourishing elements. Even then, due to the digestive power, it's quite strong. Look at other animals, buffalo, ox, horse, elephant, etc. They are neither served wholesome dishes, nor get any invigorating drinks, medicines or drugs. Even then, they are very strong. They acquire sufficient blood and flesh from ordinary grass and leaves. Which eatables have vitamins and what is their quantity? Which drugs are powerful and to what extent? Instead of getting into this maze, one should assess whether one's digestive system is functioning properly or not. If not, then the same should be considered as the root cause of all the weakness and diseases, and one should pay attention to rectify malfunctioning. A village farmer remains healthy and hefty simply by eating a coarse meal, works for 12 hours and enjoys deep sleep in the night. On the other hand, people working in cities eat sweets, milk products, pickles, sauce and a variety of dishes and also take tonics daily. Even then they remain weak and thin. They get tired by just sitting in the office for 6 hours, return home with the pain of migraine and do not get sound sleep in the night. All this is the play of digestive power. There is no power in the eatables, the power resides in the digestive system. The digestive juices that are excreted by the mouth, stomach, liver, intestines, etc. are so magical that when mixed with the food, they make it suitable to fulfill the body need. The digestive juices of billy goat make the grass such that it produces sufficient fat in the body. If the digestive power is perfect, a human can also extract all the essential ingredients even from ordinary food. A person desirous of rejuvenation should keep in mind that he should first get rid of artificiality and adopt a simple, sattvic and a natural way of life. Next, he should pay attention to improve the digestive system. A simple test of digestive power is whether a person feels hungry at the right time or not. The food intake is properly digested or not. Whether bowels are easily cleared or not. If these functions of the digestive system are not right, then one should rectify them. And if they are perfect, then one should try to maintain them. Proper functioning of the digestive system depends on 4 factors. They are selection of eatables, technique of eating, appropriate physical activity, and proper management of daily routine. If these factors are properly taken care of, then the digestive system will remain perfect all the time. If perchance any malfunctioning occurs, that will be rectified quickly. Now, let us look deeply into 4 factors. Selection of eatables. A human being resembles the configuration of a monkey. The latter eats fruits and leaves. Therefore, the dietitians recommend fruits and vegetables as the best food for the human beings. There is no other food that matches it so easily digestible, nourishing, invigorating and pure blood forming the qualities. The scriptures say, Jivo Jivasya Bhojanam, meaning only live eatables are the best food for a human being. That is why milk, curd, buttermilk, fruits, which are supposed to be full of vitality, rank first among the eatables items for human species. Apart from being juicy and lively, they also satisfy the taste buds. Next follows the vegetables. They certainly possess vital elements but do not fit the criteria of taste. Therefore, many of them are not consumed in the natural form. For example, gourd, pumpkin, potato, brinjal, bitter gourd, round gourd, etc. cannot be eaten raw. They have to be cooked. But there are certain vegetables like tomatoes, carrots, radish, cucumber, lady's finger, etc., which can be eaten in the raw form. In this sequence, dry grains fruits occupy the third place. Sapless dry grains are less beneficial as compared to green grains. For example, gram peas, maize, millet, wheat, etc. in the green state are more nourishing than their dry counterparts. Similarly, grapes, wet dates, and green coconut are better than currant, dry dates, and dry coconut, respectively. More natural and lively the food, better it is. In other words, less the food grains are processed, better they are. For example, sprouted wheat or gram seeds in raw form consume an excellent food. Next in the order of merit are dalia, coarsely ground grains, bread of unfiltered flour, bread of filtered flour, and then the bread of maida respectively. The reason is more the food grains are transmuted from the natural form, more they become harmful. Dalia is easily digested because the grains are only broken into small pieces. However, in making maida, the grains are crushed into a fine powder. As a result, the bread of maida is digestive in a relatively longer time and hence causes constipation. If the same is fried in ghee or oil, much of the nourishing elements are destroyed. Therefore, puri, paratha, or fried elements become devoid of nutrients. Khoya, a thickened milk product made by excessively heating the milk, loses all the virtues of milk. Juice of sugarcane is much more nutritious than sugar or sweets made out of it. The reason is simple. When any raw vegetable is eaten, heated, processed, and mixed with spices, it's losing its nutritious elements depending on the number of cycles it has passed through. While examining utility of eatables, it should be seen whether they suit the taste buds in the natural form or not. They are juicy and live or not. Food that pass this test should be considered best. There are some fruits like apple, grapes, pomegranates, etc., which can be obtained in good quantity only by rich people. However, there are a number of fruits which even the poor people can buy. For example, orange, mango, lemon, papaya, raspberry, guava, rose apple, plum, musk lemon, watermelon, carrot, tomato, etc. are such seasonal fruits which are not very costly, even the poor can buy them. Among the green cereals, gram, peas, millet, maize, wheat, etc. are quite delicious, and if they are quite slightly steamed, the taste increases tremendously. This is followed by those vegetables which cannot be eaten raw. For example, gourd, spinach, fenugreek, potato, etc. need to be boiled before eating. However, it must be kept in mind that neither the husk of cereals nor peel of vegetables should be removed, nor the juice be thrown after boiling. The shell, husk, peel, and juice of every fruit, vegetable, and cereal contains nourishing elements, vitamins, and minerals, and hence they must be consumed along with other parts of edible items. Chilies and spices should be best avoided. The amount of salt that is needed for the body is normally available in the eatables. However, if there is an extra need of augmenting taste, small quantity of salt may be added. Barley is the only grain among the cereals which needs the removal of husk. All other grains should be used with the husk. They should be taken in the form of khichdi or dalia. The latter may be cooked in milk or whey. Pulses like moong, kidney beans, masoor, etc. should not be split. Dal of whole grains is more nourishing. While preparing roti, care should be taken to make it thicker and cook it on low flame. Frying vegetables or dal with ghee or oil partially burns the nutritious elements. Another point to remember is that variety of vegetables or dal should not be taken in a single meal. Each edible item is digestive in a different manner, and hence consuming several items together increases the chance of indigestion. Taking bread with one dal or one vegetable is enough. The tradition of decorating lunch, dinner with several dishes is really very harmful for health. Chapter 3. Pure and succulent food is most nourishing because it is digested more easily. Easily digested food makes pure body fluids and blood, and this is the very basis of making the body healthy and energetic. The quality of an eatable should not be judged by its taste or price, but by virtue of being pure, sappy, and succulent. Sweets, dishes garnished with heavy milk products like cheese, ghee, butter, khoya, etc. are devoid of wholesome elements, and they are consumed more due to their taste. But they are not digested properly and hence create problems, particularly for the stomach and the whole body in general. Ready-made packaged food available in the market is much more harmful. In general, it has been observed In order to earn more profit, peddlers, vendors, restaurants, and even manufacturers of packaged food do not even follow prescribed norms. How can one expect healthy food from them? Sattu made at home is 1,000 times better than halwa of the market. Similarly, non-vegetarian food, wine, smoking or chewing tobacco, etc. have no place in human diet. Such tamasic items produced harmful effects on the mind-body system. Therefore, one should keep oneself away from them, and if by chance habit of any of these is formed, it should be rectified as soon as possible. Technique of eating. The way of eating is more important than the quality of eatables. Taking every ordinary food in the right manner can give better results than consuming quality food in a wrong manner. In this context, one has to pay attention to 3 questions: when to eat, how much to eat, and how to eat. We answer these questions one by one. When to eat. The answer to this question is that one should eat at a fixed time, when one feels hungry. One should eat when both of these synchronize. Normally, for a healthy person, it is enough to take meals twice daily. These times can be 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. When one can adjust this time slightly according to one's convenience. The habit of taking meals at fixed time is nicely rewarded in the long run. Further, one should not take anything between 2 meals. It is a bad habit to chew on something or the other throughout the day. This disturbs the digestion process. Suppose we are cooking rice in a vessel and go on adding small amounts of rice grain in it. After short intervals, the result will be that some grains will be overcooked, some of them will be half cooked, and the rest of them will be uncooked. This kind of cooking will never serve the purpose. The same rule applies to the stomach. The food once consumed gets digested by the next meal time. Eating in between disturbs the digestion process. One should eat when one feels hungry and the stomach appears to be empty. If one does not feel hungry at a usual time, then one should skip that meal and should not take anything till the next meal time. Suppose one does not feel hungry at 11 a.m. in the morning, but gut gets hungry at 2 p.m. and starts eating at that time. It will disturb the cycle. Hence, one should avoid this habit. Not feel hungry at a fixed meal time means there is some undigested food in the stomach. Hence, in order to digest it, missing one meal is essential. This synchronity of the set meal time and intense hunger is the right time for meals. One should not take full meals early in the morning. Whatever is consumed in the dinner in the previous night is not fully digested due to sleep. Hence, stomach should get some more time after sleep to adjust the same. Taking full meal right in the morning is equivalent to giving a servant another task before he has completed the one in hand. However, if one feels hungry in the morning and it appears difficult to work without taking something, then a liquid diet of milk, buttermilk, fruit juice, water mixed with lemon and honey may be taken. Similarly, if hunger is felt at other times of the day, one should take liquids or easily digestible food. How to eat. One should eat with a calm, pleasant and relaxed mind. It is not good to take or serve food when the mind is filled with grief, anger, excitement, pain or negative thoughts. During such moments, the glands secrete digestive juices, get dried, and hence the juices essential for digestion are not available for the food intake. It is well known that during excitement of any kind, one does not feel hungry. This also proves that during the time the body is not ready to take food. Thus, one should not eat with a cool and pleasant mind. One should eat with a cool and pleasant mind, chewing each morsel thoroughly before swallowing it. There should be no hurry. The task of teeth is to grind the food, and the task of stomach and intestine is to digest the same. If the teeth do not grind the morsel properly and it is swallowed half ground, the teeth has to be done by the stomach and the intestines, and in this process they are overburdened. There are small glands in the mouth which secrete digestive juices while chewing the morsel. If these juices are not available to the food, it will be difficult to digest the food. According to Ayurveda, each morsel should be chewed 32 times before swallowing. In practice, such a counting is difficult.
Nevertheless, one must pay attention to grind the morsel thoroughly before swallowing it. Dalia, halwa, kheer, etc. should also be chewed properly. They should not be drunk like water. Even milk or water should not be consumed in one go. Rather, they should be taken sip by sip, retaining them in the mouth. Considering food as amrit, nectar or prasad, one should eat it with joy and respect. It's a bad habit to get angry or find faults in food on slight reduction in taste or flavor. Food taken with ill will, hatred, attribution of fault, disrespect, etc. generates disorders. Thus, instead of producing a beneficial effect, it produces a harmful effect on health. Even if a simple food is taken with gratitude, considering it to be nutritious and healthy, it will certainly digest fast and produce pure blood. How much to eat? The answer to this question is that one should eat less than the hunger. Everybody's food intake and the digestive power are different. The same quantity of food cannot be prescribed for all. The decision has to be taken by the stomach of a person consuming the food. The stomach tells us what the requirement of the body is and what its digestive power is. We should provide whatever it asks for. Ayurvedic scriptures say that the stomach should be filled half with food and half should be left empty, 1/4 portion for water and remaining 1/4 for air. Indeed, it's difficult to do such measurements, but it must be kept in mind that food intake should be less than the hunger and some space should be left in the stomach. One should eat so much that after meals, it does not become difficult to work or move around. One should feel refreshed and energetic after meals. But if laziness and heaviness is felt, it should be understood that it's due to overeating. There is no harm if the food is taken in lesser quantity, rather it's beneficial because it's digested easily. The bile present in the gallbladder falls short for assisting the digestion. Hence, food is excreted as half-digested feces. Therefore, it must be kept in mind that one should eat less than the full capacity of the stomach. The dinner should be taken 2 to 3 hours prior to sleeping. Sleeping immediately after dinner produces indigestion and also disturbs sound sleep. Keeping in mind what to eat, how and when to eat, and how much to eat and acting accordingly removes all complaints regarding malfunctioning of stomach. This also removes constipation and strengthens the digestive system as a whole. Appropriate physical activity. If a machine is kept idle for a long time, its parts get rusted and the dirt is deposited on it. And if it is run excessively, its parts wear out and become useless. The same rule applies to the human body. Lying idle in laziness, shirking physical work in the garb of dignity drains out the life force of the body. In order to retain the power and flexibility of muscles, it is essential to give appropriate physical work to all parts of the body. Thus, in order to maintain health, it's absolutely necessary to undertake some physical activity, exercise that involves nearly all body parts. However, this physical labor should not be so much that it exhausts all the vital energy. If a person works more than one's capacity, it increases heat within its body, which in turn destroys vital elements. Such people do not live longer. If a person spends more than his income, he is bound to become bankrupt. Therefore, one should surely work enthusiastically, do physical labor and give work to all the body parts, but should work within the limits of his capacity. This is appropriate physical activity and only this is beneficial. Many people earn money by mental endeavor. Such people think why they should take the trouble of doing work manually when it can be done by the servant. This is their mistake. Servant's stomach cannot digest the food consumed by the master. If a master feels thirsty, hungry or getting relieved of excrement or urine, he cannot get such tasks done by the servant. Even eminent persons who are extremely busy take up some or the other physical activity to keep themselves fit. Tasks like gardening, carpentry, laundry work, cleaning of home, etc. should be a part of your daily routine. Games like tennis, football, volleyball, cricket, etc. can be chosen. To enrich our respiratory system with fresh air, It's essential to go for a morning walk of at least 3 to 4 miles. Practice of yoga, pranayam daily is also good. Every part of the body should get appropriate physical work, without which the fat starts accumulating and attacked by disease like constipation, piles, arthritis. Physical activity is a must for every human being, whether he is rich or poor, educated or uneducated, eminent or a lay person. Proper management of daily routine. Apart from proper food and physical activity, in order to maintain good health, discipline and orderliness must form a part of the daily routine. There should be a time for each and every task: getting up, taking bath, exercise, sleeping, eating, office, social work, entertainment. Married people should observe self-restraint as far as sex is concerned. Frequency of sex must not be exceeded once in a month or so. A wrong notion has been spread among the younger male generation that more sex is required to keep wife satisfied. The truth is that most women do not desire sex like sensual men. They need a spouse who is hardworking, honest, jovial, loving, faithful and upright in character. There are many couples where husbands are invalid, but their married life is full of pleasure and peace. Excessive sex lowers the attraction between husband and wife. It also gives rise to venereal diseases. Therefore, in this matter, the couples must maintain a healthy norm and follow its rigidity. Unrestrained sex drains the energy of both the partners and eventually leads to ill health. All the day tasks should be properly scheduled. Regular disciplined life saves a person from the clutches of diseases. Simplicity and naturality should always be kept in mind. Plenty of clothes are not required to cover a body. In the Indian context, dhoti kurta and chappal are enough. Of course, in order to protect oneself from excessive cold or heat, some arrangement can be done. But loading oneself with heavy clothes prevents the sun rays and fresh air from reaching the skin. Its ill effect is akin to keeping the plants away from the sunlight and air. One should not always try to protect oneself from the effect of the seasons. The summer, winter, rainy seasons energize the body and make it strong. They also improve the immune system of the body. People who use coolers or air conditioners during summer and heaters during winter and who never allow even a drop of rain to fall on the body normally are seen to get affected easily by the change of weather. Their bodies become weak and they easily fall prey to viral infections and diseases. Therefore, while protecting oneself from the severity of seasons, normally one should bear the effects of the season. Cleanliness, purity and sanctity produce beneficial effects on health. Sweat too is dirty and toxic like urine, and hence undergarments should be daily washed and dried in the sun. The residence should not be damp, light and air must reach there. Body, clothes and house should always be pure, neat and clean. It is also essential to keep food and water and place where they are kept clean. Cheaper items may be used, but they must be neat and clean. Costly and precious items give no benefit if they are dirty and filthy. A habit should be cultivated to keep smiling and feel happy. Howsoever big the forthcoming agenda of work, whatever are the confronting problems, whatever be the magnitude of troubles faced, they should not be overloaded in the mind. Sorrow, grief, worry, distress, anguish, perplexity, agitation, anxiety, uneasiness, state of uncertainty, etc. are top enemies of good health.
Chapter 4. The harm that is produced by one day's grief, anxiety or worry is equivalent to the harm that is done by not taking food for 4 days. Such mental disturbances create more problems than solving them. Retaining mental balance under testing times is one of the best means of solving the problem. Laughing 1 hour daily is more nourishing than drinking 1 glass of milk or taking 50 grams of milk fat. A person who remains cheerful, happy, glad, smiling, contented, delightful, and full of hope always keeps healthy. One biologist says, happiness and health are intimately related, but I don't know whether people maintain health due to happiness or they remain happy because of good health. Indeed, cheerfulness has a greater effect on health. There is a French saying, laugh and grow fat. Therefore, one who laughs maintains good health. On the contrary, people who are pessimists, jealous, resentful, fretful, fault-finding, and narrow-minded burn their life force in the fire of these mental disorders. Gradually, they become weak and ultimately fall sick. Vices like deceit, lying, hypocrisy, robbery, ego, wickedness, bad conduct, etc. are also extremely harmful to health. The mind should be kept calm, cheerful, pure and worry-free. One should always hope for a brighter future. Others should be treated with goodwill, a feeling of kinship, love and generosity. One should have firm faith in God and remain free from anxiety. Believing strongly that the life is protected by the Almighty, one can easily get rid of worldly fears and doubts. Thus, in order to maintain good health, there is need to consciously make it practice. Select proper eatables, eat in a proper way, do appropriate physical exercise, and manage the daily routine properly. If the mind is kept alert and the routine is practiced carefully, it will become a habit, and once a person becomes habitual of these 4 activities, it should be considered that she or he has conquered her health. O men, women of desirous of rejuvenation, these 4 factors are not medicines, but they are more precious than the colored bottles costing thousands of rupees. Practice these simple rules. Your health will improve so much that it may be considered rejuvenation as compared to the present state. Clean the barrel. With a view to curing and healing chronic disorders, it becomes necessary first to clean the internal parts of the body very well. After a prolonged operation, the parts of a machine demand proper overhauling for the resumption of machine previously working efficiency. Similarly is the case of the human body. That is to say, our body too is a machine in a way put to work for a whole life and hence likely to catch defects and disorders. Usually we largely remain confined or particularly careful about our external cleanliness, which is accomplished by bathing and washing. Whereas internal cleaning of the barrel, the digestive tract, which is most essential, is mostly ignored. People careless about such washing so far should turn towards it with first priority right now. Patients of irregular bowel, digestion, constipation and delayed and interrupted motions, gas troubles, acidity, etc. should make no delay. We know that the blocked gutters decay and spread, reek, and pouring rose water wouldn't do any help here. Instead, the rose water itself goes waste. The only remedy would be the elimination of the deposited stagnant filth therein. The patients of chronic digestive trouble seeking their liberation from there should think of throwing out the manumission from their decaying bowls on a priority basis. Such a washing of the alimentary canal would prove to be the most promising step with regard to the successful treatment. There is a fashion of administering one or the other purgatives for the elimination of staying stool. However, the experience tells that the administration of purgatives is an imperfect and often detrimental method of cleaning and washing of the system. The long retention of the stool in the large intestine gradually becomes dry and hard, often infested with worms, and firmly sticks to the wall of the reservoir, rectum. The true purgative should make the part it's targeted to for actual healing. However, the practical attack happens to be quite different. The purgatives begin their action right from the stomach and carry on at the most up to the level of the small intestine. Now what happens in their case is that the food so far digested or partly digested is unusually liquefied by excessive gastric juices poured therein due to forced excitation of the gastric glands. Again, the same thing happens in the small intestine where the major portion of the digestion and the assimilation of the food takes place. The result is that the chyme and the chyle suffer insurrection. The partly digested food passes out, rather forcefully expelled out in the form of loose motion. On the contrary, the actual cause of the ailments remain untouched in the form of rectal accumulations, the site where the purgatives fail to make their access in their vital form. Besides this disability, they have also found to be injurious. Thus, depending upon such obliviously imperfect and harmful medicines would be so fatuous as pouring buckets of milk, ghee and perfumes to recoup rotting gutters without the actual mud removing. What is safe then? There is a damned good and safe way invented by our ancestors to get rid of these tenacious disorders
and resurrect and restore our lost health. And that is nothing but enema. The use of enema for cleaning the rectum, large intestine is the best process. Enema pot is sold in medical store. It's a simple instrument consisting of a reservoir and a drain tube of rubber. Preferably lukewarm water contained in the reservoir is ejected into the large intestine through the rubber tube, the rear end of which is introduced into the rectum. Some experts would prefer to dissolve something bathing soap also to facilitate lubrication for the enhancement of the expulsion of the feces. However, it would be far better to add some quantity of filtered lemon juice to it. As far as the posture of the patient while taking enema is concerned, there are two methods equally innocuous. In one method, the patient should lie on his back on the ground, water-filled enema instrument be put on the table or chair, and the rear end of the rubber tube, after applying a little oil on it, introduced about 1 inch inside the anus. The tap is then opened to release the flow of water, which gradually fills in the rectum. Sometimes entry of water may cause some pain and patient may eventually feel a pressure for the evacuation. But there is nothing to worry about. If the pressure appears unbearable, close the tap. After the completion of the process, the patient is required to lie as such for 15-20 minutes. Meanwhile, it's advised for him to contract and inflate his belly so that it facilitates the dilution and release of accumulated stool sticking to the walls of the rectum. Alternately, the patient may choose a camel posture, belly downwards and back and hind part lifted up so that the anal aperture comes to tie up and raised, encouraging flow of water into the rectum. Rest of the process is same as mentioned above. Now, as for the time for enema, the mornings would be the best, but evenings wouldn't be bad and discouraging. The other times are equally suitable. The important thing is that the enema should be taken empty stomach, normally after completing daily morning chores. The stomach should be load-free. After taking enema, usually there is loose motion with the pressure of water. This will empty the bowl and the patient will feel relief. In the ordinary, less complicated cases, just 2 repetitions may be enough. But in the acute and chronic problems, twice a day for a week should be essential. If it is to be continued for a long duration, it must be done under the supervision of an expert. The washing should be done slowly and carefully, keeping the protection of intestinal walls in mind. Enema is not any recent invention. Our forefathers already knew about it by the name of Basti Kriya. They used to suck water through their anus, retain it there for a while and then regurgitate it with pressure so that it drained along with the accumulated filth out of the body. However, the method being not so easy was suitable for the yogis only. Anyway, the enema bears almost full similitude and is easily available for the common people who are not familiar with Hatha Yoga. It is cautioned that enema should not be given to infants and pregnant women. During these periodical cleanings, certain necessary precautions should be taken. First, the stomach should be given necessary rest and relaxation. Thus, the patients are suggested to keep fast side by side at least 2 or 3 days. During those fasts, he should drink water or prefer liquid dyes. Here, some honey and lemon juice may be mixed with water. That will increase the taste and at the same rate make it much more wholesome. Light exercise like bathing, easy walking and massage may be included in the routine of these resting days. No hard work should be done. It can be safely concluded that enema and resting go hand in hand. That would provide a remarkable rate of relief. As the schoolboys feel delighted in the holidays, so also one's digestive organs feel relieved during fasting. These apparent inactive moments of theirs do not beguile them to mar their own ability by their own hands and make them indolent. Instead, they gain twice as much fervor for the future duty. It has been noticed that during the period of this kind of rejuvenation, the excretion, expulsion of filth through the eyes, ears, nose and skin is remarkably escalated. The sweating now exceeds that is normal situations, often containing bad odor. The tongue becomes bitter and the urine is concentrated and colored. In fact, the increased rate of excretion through the exits work for faster purification of the body. The other thing of additional importance is to keep deliberately the skin and other exits neat and clean. Some people may feel certain uneasiness during their fasting days. They may feel like vomiting and giddiness and a sort of weakness, but there is nothing to fear. The whole process without any danger or side effects. It is another thing that has already worked. Physically weak persons should avoid prolonged repetitions with short intervals. Fruit juices are the best intake. However, it is beyond reach of common men. Then it may be substituted by lemon water, soups of green vegetables, etc., as well as moderate quantities of raw vegetables. Enema supplemented with fasting and light food is a very good method of acquiring rejuvenation. It invigorates appetite, enhances functional power, and helps in restoration of potential power of the body. Pragya Yoga, an exercise for healthy and happy life. The Indian sages, the rishis, have guided practical ways for accomplishing a purposeful life. A life when lived as per the will of Creator becomes a life united with yoga. The rishis have given the formula to evolve the unlimited powers, potentials of human life. Ashtanga Yoga is one such formula for accomplishing healthy and happy life. Asanas constitute the first phase of Ashtanga Yoga. Asana refers to a specific posture while keeping the body active internally. Our rishis have keenly observed the sitting and standing postures of different animals. They had studied the effects of different postures in the laboratory of their own bodies and developed specific asanas that had rejuvenating effect on the entire body, mind, soul system. However, with the changed attitude in the course of time, we become materialistic, and the single-track commercialized civilization has raised several problems in our body. Therefore, it is quite difficult to perform all the asanas in the present age. Gurudev Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Acharya has pioneered a novel approach to yoga for a happy and healthy life, which is simple and suited for the masses. He has named it Pragya Yoga, and under the noble Pragya Abhiyan mission, Shanti Kunj, an Aranayak of our times, which is situated in the lap of Ganges and under the shadow of Himalayas, is a center for learning of this comprehensive yoga. A brief description of this form of yoga is given below. Warm-up exercise. To begin with, the fists tightly closed and open. Now wrists are moved inward and outward in clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. This gives flexibility to the muscles of the joints and wrist. Then the elbows are folded. The elbows are folded further and moved circularly in one direction and the others as much as the joints and shoulder allow. The circular motion provides exercise to the hands, shoulders and elbow together. Hands are moved once forward and next backward in the same way as the rudder is moved while rowing a boat. This provides excellent exercise to the arms and waist. Both hands are now stretched forward and pulled inwards, then moved clockwise and anti-clockwise. This simple exercise is very helpful for patients suffering from stomach disorders. The neck is connected to all the nerves. Below the brain, it is the neck through which all the nerves passes. Being seated in Sukhasana, the neck is moved circularly in a clockwise and anti-clockwise direction. Pragya Yoga. This yoga involves all the three bodies, physical, subtle and causal of a person. The asana, physical exercise, rejuvenates body. Pranayam, breath control, strengthens mind, and chanting in the heart of the mantra augments the willpower. The sequence of exercise of this yoga is given below. Stand erect, half close the eyes and meditating on the Om of Lord Savita, rising sun, for a moment chant Om. With the faith that the subtle power of Savita is rejuvenating the body, mind and soul, with each syllable of Gayatri Mantra, follow the sequence of exercise given below. Chapter 5, Tadasana. Chanting Bhu in the heart, that is the oneself, raise both hands upward while inhaling gradually and deeply. Now stand on your toes. This benefits us in the case of weakness of the heart and blood disorders. Hast Padasana. Chanting Bhuvaha, both the hands are brought downwards from the posture of Tadasana while exhaling, and the head is bowed down to touch the knees with the palms trying to touch the floor. This removes the gastric trouble and induces vital strength in the Ida, Pingla and Sushumna nadis. Vajrasana. Chanting Swaha, toes are placed completely on the floor and haunches are set on the feet. The backbone should be erect and both palms placed on the knees. Breathe normally during the posture. This is helpful in digestion and cures gastric trouble and constipation and keeps the stomach light. Ushtrasana.
Chanting Tat, inhale deeply, put knees on the floor and keep the feet straight on the toes. The heels are held in by taking both hands from the back side. The stomach is drawn upward and head is bent backward. This makes the heart strong and spinal column flexible. This also provides exercise to Ida, Pingla and Shushuma. Yog Mudra. In this posture, chanting Savitu, exhale and clench together both the palms at the back and stretch upwardly. The head is kept downward so that the chest and stomach touch the thigh. This posture removes severe gastric trouble, gives strength to the digestive system, and increases appetite. Ardh Tadasana. Chanting Vareniyam, inhale deeply. Being seated in the posture of Vajrasana, both the hands and eyes are raised upward. This is useful as Tadasana and cures the weakness of the heart and blood disorders. Shashankasana. Chanting Bhargo, exhale, sitting in the posture of Vajrasana, both the hands are kept straight in front of the chest, palm touching the floor, while bending downwards, the stomach touching the thighs. This cures stomach problems and increases flexibility of backbone. Bhujangasana. Chanting Devasya, inhale deeply. From the previous posture, the body is moved ahead and head is raised upward like a snake hood. Eyes are kept looking upward. This provides soothing exercise to the heart and the backbone. It also cures gastric troubles. Tiryak Bhujangasana. In this posture of Bhujangasana, keeping the breath normal, chant Dhimahi and look towards the left. Then chant Dhiyo and look towards the right. It increases the flexibility of the waist. Ardh Tadasana. Chanting Prachodayat, repeat step 6. Utkata Asana. After Tadasana, chant Bhu and breathing normally, sit on the toes, calves touching the thighs, place both the palms on the knees. This gives strength to the calves and improves balance of the body. Padha Asana. Chanting Bhuva, repeat step 2. Tadasana. Chanting Swaha, repeat step 1. Coming back to the original position, chanting Om, keep the hands stretched, close the fists and bring the hand together and down energetically and stand erect. Breathe normally. The role of mind in integral rejuvenation. A boy used to live in a village. He had ridden an elephant, a horse, a bullock cart and a train. He had heard about the camel but never ridden it. He always wished he could ride the camel. One day he was returning home from another village. On the way, one businessman had made his camel sit and had gone to take a bath in the nearby river. In order to give rest to the camel, he had taken off both the saddle and the nose string of the camel. As soon as the boy saw the camel, he started dancing in delight. Where else could he get such an opportunity to fulfill his ambition? He jumped and sat on the back of the camel. According to its habit, the camel got up suddenly and started running helter-skelter. The boy became nervous, but what could he do? There was no nose halter. How could he control the camel? The camel went on running here and there according to its will, and the nervousness of the boy increased in the same ratio. Two pedestrians, after seeing the nervousness of the boy, asked, "Where will you go?" The sobbing boy replied, "Brother, I had to go to my home, but now I will go wherever this camel takes me." In the meantime, he collided with a branch of tree and fell down and injured on the ground. People will laugh at boy's foolishness, but the condition of the world today is the same as that of the boy. It is as a result of riding the uncontrolled camel of the mind that everywhere crime, unruliness, quarrels, and wickedness are reigning supreme. Because of the uncontrolled mind, people have forgotten the bliss of heavenly life, its needs and utility, and they have engrossed themselves so much in the fulfillment of worldly pleasures and meeting the selfish needs that they have forgotten to distinguish between what is good and what is bad. From the point of view of integral rejuvenation, every part of the physical body has its own significance, but the mind is almost important. It has mysterious powers. Pleasure and pain, salvation and bondage, everything is under the control of mind. The scripture says, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo. That is, mind alone is the cause of bondage and salvation of the human mind. If the worldly pleasure is required, the mind will provide it, and if the ultimate truth, moksha, is aspired for, the mind will provide it too. The mind always remains in the service of a person like a faithful servant. It is never tired. It never stops. It never gets old. Unceasing movement is its habit. It takes pleasure in making desires and runs after their fulfillment. The power of mind is unlimited, but an uncontrolled mind is like a camel without a nose halter. It throws a person in the hell of sensual pleasures, desires, sorrows, wickedness, bad habits. A person forgets why he has taken birth and what the goal of life is. The key to all siddhis lie in the control of mind, but it is not easy. The sadhana of mind is more difficult than any yoga. The scripture says, Jitam jagat ken mano hi niyan. That is, one who has conquered his mind has also conquered the world. That is why integral rejuvenation, the seer, has prayed as follows. As the spokes of the wheel of a chariot are fixed at the center, in the same way, the knowledge of Rik, Yaju and Samved is installed in the mind. O God, grant that our mind has virtuous desires. Our ancient Indian philosophers and yogacharyas devised special methods of sadhana to cleanse, purify, concentrate, make steady and control the mind. They emphasize that with abhyas, continuous practice, and vairagya, non-attachment, mind can be controlled. The same advice was also given by Lord Krishna to Arjun. What are vairagya and abhyas? Keep in mind that the evanescence and instability of worldly objects, not allowing the mind to get engrossed in them, is called vairagya. This is related to thought control. The senses are inclined naturally towards their objects. Keeping these senses away from their objects of attachment and keeping them engaged in activities which are meaningful and help in achieving the aim of self-realization is called abhyas. In abhyas, one has to adopt a dual approach. The first relating to tapa for refining the mind and the second relating to sadhana for augmentation of virtuous tendencies. Prior to mental purification, it is essential to know the faults of the mind. Enjoying the materialistic objects is the natural behavior of senses. The objects of pleasure are transitory, but the tendency of mind is to go chasing them like a mirage. The scriptures have called this tendency of mind rag. Rag inflicts pain of scarcity by cherishing the memory of unachieved pleasure. This gives rise to a sequence of vices. Rag produces malice and the latter generates anger. Rag also produces greed for accumulation. Malice awakens vice like hatred, jealousy and violence. Thereafter begins a vicious circle of deception, hypocrisy, ego, wickedness, intolerance, ingratitude, etc. Ultimately, this position of mind becomes the cause of downfall. Keeping this fact in mind, one should always engage the mind in introspection so that the virtue of vairagya is awakened. A combined platform of mind, intelligence and ego has been called Chit. In order to purify Chit, abhyas is needed. Seer Patanjali has pronounced 8 parts of Yoga Abhyas. They are Yama, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharna, Dhyan and Samadhi. Non-violence, truth, abstention from theft, celibacy and non-possession, these 5 controls have been called Yama. All the rules followed for the purification of inner and external being have been grouped under the category of Niyama. They are Shauch, inner and external purity, Santosh, contentment, Tapa, penance, Swadhyay, study of sacred text, and Ishwar, pranidhan, faith in God. External cleanliness of the body has its own significance, but the inner purity is more important. Purity of food is most important in keeping the mind pure. Sour, sweet, and bitter food excites the senses, creates instability and dullness in the mind. Therefore, the intake of juicy, soft, and nourishing food that has been earned by righteous means has been considered best for the sadhak. Keeping the body motionless or stable in one position is called asana. Controlling the flow of vital pran according to one's will is called pranayam. There are many classifications and sub-classifications of the same. Pulling the senses from their objects of desire and utilizing them for self-upliftment is called pratyahar. In the latter, one has to force the senses, including the mind, to act according to the direction of the soul. Stubborn mood does not come under control easily. Senses too revolt in the beginning, but keeping a constant pressure of them helps them in annulling their outward yearning for objects. Yama, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar are 5 external aspects of yoga which are related to the physical activities. Dharma, Dhyan, and Samadhi are internal aspects of sadhana which are based on the emotional endeavor of mind and intelligence. Focusing the mind on a specific object for a set period of time is called dharma. For this purpose, one has to imagine some form of divinity, for example, Mother Gayatri. The mind has to be made stable in the idol or the chosen deity or the flame of the candle or rising sun. The next step is dhyan. When the mind becomes stable in the chosen object of contemplation, examine the deity for a sufficient time, it is called dhyan. After practicing dhyan for a long time, when the physical form of the deity disappears and attributes of the deity become stable in the mind, it is called samadhi. In this state, a person forgets his physical body. The devotees and the deity become one. The inner consciousness supersedes the physical consciousness. In the state of samadhi, the respiration rate becomes slow. On the peak of mountains where the atmospheric pressure is low, the mountaineers get little oxygen for respiration, which produces difficulty in breathing. But the situation is different in samadhi. Due to the stopping of fickleness of mind and the movement of the body, in the state of samadhi, a need for respiration is not felt. The wastage of pran vitality that occurs when the body is in motion or when the mind wavers is stopped in this state. As a result, the brain is filled with more and more pran, which helps in loosening the knots of the mind. It is believed that impressions of several previous births remain stored in the brain. These impressions get appropriate light and energy in the state of samadhi and also get desired direction. Several states of samadhis have been described in Patanjali Yog Darshan. When the mind does not remain stable for a long time on one element but contemplates on its name, meaning and knowledge, it is called Savitark Samadhi. When the mind becomes more peaceful, it becomes stable in its meaning. It is called Nirvitak Samadhi. When the mind, after contemplating on the subtle elements, knows their form, it is called Savichar Samadhi. When the subtle form of the element too vanishes and the mind contemplates only on its knowledge, it is called Nirvichar Samadhi. With these practices, the fickleness of the mind vanish, and wherever a sadhak utilizes such a mind, it remains stable and obedient towards a set goal. Refined and pure consciousness can direct the flow pran in the direction. By regulating and controlling pran, it is possible to get desired rejuvenating work done in any part of the body. It is even possible to influence another person and the environment with this vital electricity. It is also possible to suck the vital power from outside into one's own body once the control of pran is established. Once Nirvichar Samadhi is perfected, the inner self becomes calm, pure and enlightened. Under such a state, sadhak experiences are indescribable bliss. This state is called Anand Samadhi. When the desires for objects of senses completely vanish and merely self-experience remains, it is called Asmi Tanughat Samadhi. There are higher states of Nirvichar Samadhi, which are also called Sampragyat Samadhi. This state is also called the awakening of Ritambhara Pragya. Eternal truth automatically manifests in such an enlightened soul. Under the state of manifestation of pragya, the entire being of the sadhak is enlightened. In that supernatural divine light, the separate existence of sadhak too disappears. At that time, it is felt that one who knows is altogether different from what is to be known. The object for which so much extraordinary effort was made is nothing but one's own soul. This unification of the self and the ultimate, supreme being has been called Asampragyat Samadhi. Once the mind vanishes in the enlightened being, the mundane bonds too vanish. A blissful form of the self is seen. This experience is indescribable. Thus, taking recourse of the two steps of Vairagya and Abhyas of Yoga Sadhana, every sadhak can march towards in the direction of integral rejuvenation. What should be the basis for contemplation for a person of specific mentality to achieve Vairagya? How should an Abhyas be initiated? Everyone cannot take such a decision. If the patient prescribes a medicine for himself, he will have to face more problems. In fact, he needs the guidance of an expert physician. It is true that sadhak has to travel on his own towards the set goal, but without the proper guidance of a guide, there are ample chances of going astray. Therefore, every aspiring sadhak moving ahead on the path of integral rejuvenation should seek the protection and guidance of an adept guide.